1 Corinthians chapter 2. We'll read our two text verses, verses 8 and 9. It says, "But as it is written, eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God." And last week we kind of got into the introduction of the eye over here on Satan's learning tree, where we basically just kind of talked about still the same thought of seeing, and we talked at length about all of that. We talked about how Satan uses different things to try to throw stumbling blocks in our way. And now we're going to kind of look at three areas at which Satan, or to better understand how Satan uses the eye. I believe seeing it through the perspective of the following thoughts will be most beneficial, and it's practical. Now you might be thinking that's kind of dumb, but if you look back over, still looking back over in Genesis 3, chapter 3, Genesis 3, verse number 6, it says, "And the woman saw." Now, we all have eyeballs and we can see, some with help, like me when I'm trying to read. But we all have an ability to see. And it's through that Satan, for lack of a better term, that's what he used to get her distracted. The practical nature of just a glance isn't always going to get us, and as far as to get us to sin. Now, I mean, when we're out about in the world, just normal running around, some things there's going to be some things that's out there to get your attention, like sales. Used to, back in the day, you would have when basically people went to town to do all their Christmas shopping or any type of shopping that they needed to do, you had storefronts on the main street downtown, and they would have these big windows, and inside those windows they would have the things that they would use to try to advertise and show you what they had to get you into the store. Now we just open our phones and we look, and there it is. You'll even have people, companies that will pay to put their product right in front of you. When TV came into being, and that's kind of when we started seeing the decline of the storefront buildings, because they were able to put on TV what they wanted you to see, and to entice you to come to their place of business and buy that's all practical stuff. And a lot of that's not bad, but it's just how advertisers use the practicality of the vision that we have to entice us into coming in and buying something. I mean, that's, we've talked about car lots. So you drive by a car lot, these cars hardly ever move, but yet they're out there washing them every week. Why? Because a dirty car is not going to get your attention like a clean, shiny car when the sun's out and it's hitting it, and you see that thing, you're like, oh man, that's a nice looking car. And you want to turn around and go back and look at it. And if they can get you on the lot, and then if they can get you in the dealership, chances are they're going to get you in that car driving off. That's just the way our vision works. And Satan is the master at getting our attention through what we see. And that's kind of what he did here, because when you look at the first 5 words here, verse number 6, and when the woman saw. Now, the interesting thing about this is where was this tree located? Anybody?
Was it in the middle of?
It was in the middle of the Garden of Eden, right? That's what the Bible tells us. Now, where did Adam and Eve live? In the Garden of Eden. We don't have an exact time frame of how long they lived in the garden from the time that they were created until the time of the fall of man here in chapter number 3. But let's just say they lived there for 5 years. So just pick a number, random number, just using it. Where was that tree for 5 years? Where were they for the 5 years before Satan slithered up on the tree and tempted her? They were in the garden. So this was something, it was practical. They were used to it. They had seen it. They'd been around it. They had probably enjoyed the shade that it had provided. They had, birds of the air had enjoyed the place to lodge and stuff. The practicality of the practicalness and nature of the tree has always been there. The practicality of a lot of the sins that we get involved in have always been there. I mean, you hear people talk about, when I've heard it. I don't know if you have, but I've heard people try to say that, when it comes to drugs, specifically, especially like marijuana, pot, because it's a naturally grown, and they're like, well, didn't God make it? You ever heard anybody use that excuse? Well, if it's so bad, then why did God make it? It's the simple fact that just because it's there doesn't mean, it's to be used in that form and fashion and way. But the practicality of it is it's there, just like tobacco, and the things that go along with tobacco and the nicotine and everything else, the side effects, that it will harm you just the same way as all this other stuff. The sun is a practical, and we need the sun for life. We need it to live. We need it to see. We need it for things to grow. But yet what happens is what happens if you mishandle the sun? You get burned. You get sunburnt, which can lead to cancer. So, like I said, just because there's this practicality and natural use of all this stuff out there doesn't mean that it's there for us to partake in. This tree was here. It was set there, and they had to make a choice, just the same as you and I. When we go outside, we have a choice. We can either put on something that's going to keep the sun from burning us, whether it be clothes, long sleeves, pants, whatever, a hat. If you're bald like me, you put a hat on so your head don't, turn into a cherry or a strawberry or whatever, bright red like Rudolph's nose, and it's all right here instead of just right here. I have to put a hat on if I don't want my head to burn. Or we can put sunscreen on to help keep and minimize the effects the sun's going to have on us. The fact is that when it came to the practicality of the practical nature of this tree, it had always been there. And they were told, don't eat of it. Didn't mean that they couldn't continue to still enjoy the benefits of that tree except for eating it. That was the only benefit that they were excluded from enjoying. We can enjoy the sunshine. Like, right now it's kind of poked out through the clouds, and we can go out there, and if you want to go out there into the sauna that's going to be out here in a little while, you can go out there and enjoy the steam and the heat coming up off that pavement that's soaking wet right now. And there you go. You can enjoy. But if we go out there and we don't handle the sun right, we're going to pay for it. Just the same way as it was here. Satan tempted her because he got her to see that tree in a new and exciting way that she had never seen the tree before. Satan will always do that when it comes to different sins that he wants to entangle and dangle out there in front of us, to try to get us to partake in, and then allow that to become a part of our lives. I mean, we use the thought of, you know, illicit drugs and stuff and alcohol. You can, it's all made from natural stuff. Now, a lot of the drinks that we drink, you know, may or may not be made of natural stuff, like soda pop. I like that Mountain Dew. That's my drink. There's not that much natural in Mountain Dew outside of the water that they use, but everything else in that drink is artificial. It's chemicals and all this, that, and the other, and it can be bad for us if taken into excess. That's just the way that was. Now you take alcohol; it's all made 90% of it's made from natural things, but combined together, it becomes something that is addictive. And Satan always, I mean, you watch commercials, you see commercials, whether it be on your phone, whether it be on TV, or whatever you're watching. It's in the movies, it's in the TV shows that we watch, and everything else. And you hear and you see people going out, and the one thing that's always put out there front and center is how much of a good time people have when consuming alcohol and this, that, and the other, and different types of drugs. That's all we ever see. That's all we're ever presented with. Why? Because if we've seen what can happen, which we know, but when we see it and it affects us personally, then we kind of, oh no, I'm not going to go that path. But when all we see and all we hear from other people talking about is how much of a good time that they had out at the bar or down here doing this or doing that or whatever, then that's all we see. And then the Satan can take that, and we can see that on TV, and you're like, man, they are having a pretty good time. And if we're not careful, we will want to have that, and we'll find ourselves being drawn to that, just the same way as it was Eve here. Eve, they've been around this tree. We're still going to use our fake number of 5 years. They'd been around it for 5 years. This tree, it had never one time caught their eye the way it did the day that she happened to be walking by it, and here comes Satan in the form of a serpent out and gets her attention to look at it in a different way. We can see alcohol and go, I don't want anything to do with it. But if Satan can get us in a position of our life where we're not really paying attention, or get us into a situation of a lot of peer pressure, if you're one of these that can't handle peer pressure very well, you have to really be, cognitive of staying away from it and not putting yourself in it. But Satan will find a way to get us to put ourselves in a position to where we see something in a different light, and then now all of a sudden that's all we obsess over. Just the same way as it was here. The practical use of the tree, the fruit that it provided, it was not going to kill them instantly. As far as physical, the only thing that was going to die in partaking of this tree was the simple fact that God had told them not to partake of it, because in the day you do, you're going to die. And he was talking about a spiritual death. A death that is going to separate us from God. Just the same way as a physical death will separate us from our loved ones. When that family member or friend dies,
Sorry.
Is that
It's Jack.
Jack? I thought there was a fire alarm going off or something. I thought, is that the smoke alarm? Where's that? But anyway, when it comes right down to it, when that separation occurs, we're sad, and it happens. But here in this instance, Satan told her the truth. You're not going to die physically. Satan knew what was going to happen if he could get her to look at that tree in a different light. And Satan is always out to try to get us as Christians to see something that can come in that he can use to cause the spiritual life that we have with God and to sever that tie. We're still saved. It ain't doing nothing with our salvation. But what it can do is it can put distance between us and the Lord to the point to where he can no longer, just as Christ from all eternity, from eternity past, all the way up until the time that he died on the cross in current biblical current day eternity present, when he's hanging on the cross, all he had ever known was communion and fellowship with God the Father, right? I mean, this is nothing groundbreaking or new that we're talking about here. But until that moment when God, at 12 noon, turned his back on his son and the earth fell dark for 3 hours, and Christ was hanging there on the cross, that was the first time that there was a separation between God the Father and God the Son, Jesus Christ. That's the first time. Up until that time, they had never been separated. But when a thrice holy God can't even look on his own Son, his only begotten Son, as John 3:16 tells us, he cannot look upon his only begotten Son because of the sin and the wrath that has to be poured out on him for you and I. He cannot look upon him because of the sin nature that he had fully taken on to fully be able to do away with, so that we, if we're willing to accept it, can have access back to God. That's what Satan was trying to do. And that's what he's always trying to do. He's always trying to throw something out there in our path to get us to obsess over something to the point to where we have to have it. I mean, there's a lot of people today, owning stuff that's not bad. My biggest fault, I like things that go vroom vroom, 4 wheels and a big motor. I like cars, so much so that on that iPad over there, I have a list of every car I've ever owned, and it's like 30. I like cars. You get my Facebook and you pull it up, you're going to see probably Mustangs, the 3rd gen Camaro. I really like those from the 80s and early 90s. And F-150 pickup trucks. That's what you're going to see. Why? Because that's what I like watching. I like looking. I just like cars. I just like them. And I could own every car I ever wanted, but if it kept me from being able to be here because I have to work every moment that I can to pay for it, what good is it going to do? This like the Bible tells us, what good does it do a man to gain the whole world? Anything you could ever want and ever need, what good is it going to do for you to put everything within your being to obtain everything this world has to offer if it costs you your own soul? What good is it going to do in eternity? When you're dying the second death and in hell for eternity, what good's owning all those Mustangs and Camaros and F-150s with the superchargers and lowered and jacked up and all this, that, and the other with the light bars? What good's all that going to do me if I find myself in hell because I chose to chase after that rather than chase after God? What good's that going to do me? It's not going to do me any good. But how many of you have heard the statement, misery loves company? Guess what? Satan is miserable. He is. But what's he wanting? He's wanting company to accompany him into an eternity of misery And that's why he's fighting so hard and relentlessly. He never gives up. Never gives up. And he will never give up. And that's why he'll take something that's practical. I mean, like I said, I could own 2 or 3 houses, but if I'm having to kill myself and work myself to the bone and fingers to the bone and never be able to have any time for God and come to church, it's not going to do me any good, because owning 15 houses and dying and going to hell, I'm not going to have, the Bible tells us exactly what you're going to experience. Every opportunity that somebody mentioned the name Jesus Christ to these people, they're going to be spending an eternity in hell, remembering every time they had an opportunity to accept Jesus Christ and spurn it and said, nope, I like where I'm going right now. You see that in Luke, I think it's Luke chapter 14 with the rich man and Lazarus. Let me see. 16. Yep. I knew it's 14 or 16. But Luke 16 with the rich man and Lazarus in verses number 19 all the way down to the end of the chapter. Let's see. Verse number 25. But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. It don't get no plainer than that right there. To see that they're not going to be able to escape all of the things, all of the times that they had to accept Jesus Christ to be Lord and Savior of their life. And they're going to be worried about their family members, because in the mass sea of people, if you get separated from somebody that you're wanting to be around, well, let's just take an event down at Neyland Stadium, or at and that's only 100 and something thousand people. But when all of those people are leaving, and you've got somebody, me and Lori goes, and we get separated. We both know we're there, but I can't see her. And we get separated, and she forgets where we parked and how to get there. Or I do, since I'm, old and about to experience Alzheimer's. And I forget, and I need her young mind to help me. I'm lost. Even in a group of 100,000 people, mass exiting, trying to get out of that place to go home. Even though I know she's there, I'm not going to see her. That's the same way it's going to be at the Great White Throne Judgment. All the mass of eternity of people are going to be in the gallery. You're not going to know who's there and who's not. So then you get to see the experience that when your loved one gets thrown off into hell, and then here you go, and we're just using generalities with everybody being lost and rejecting God. What good is it going to do you to know that somebody's in hell if you never even get to see him? Because that's also part of the wrath of God is that you're going to be experiencing everything alone. That's why in that same Luke chapter 16, that's why the rich man was so concerned about his brethren, because he did not want them to come and experience the same torment that he was. But it's too late at that time. When we die this side of eternity, it's too late. Once you're dead, you're dead. There's nothing you can do. For 2,000 plus years, 3,000, however long it's been, because we don't know the time frame that example that Christ gave of a literal hell. We don't know when that happened. But we know it was given to us about, roughly around 2,000 years ago. For at least 2,000 years, the rich man's been in hell, still crying out to not Lazarus, but to Abraham. And Abraham's not there. He's done been taken back to heaven because of the faith that he had in Jesus, in God, in his time of, the way salvation worked before Christ came and died on the cross.
Amen.
He's still down there trying to find Abraham, begging for somebody to. His brothers could be down there, but he don't know it. He can't see him. He can't find him. And all he's doing is crying out for somebody to go tell his brethren so that they don't end up in the same place that he finds himself in. When the lost people that we love and care about find themselves in a burning hell, all they're going to be doing is crying out for eternity, remembering every opportunity, every time they saw your face and they knew you were a Christian and saw God in you and rejected that and run the other way. All they're going to be doing for eternity is remembering that, because that's part of the curse, part of the wrath of God in hell. All of this is practical. Seeing with our eyes is practical. Wanting things is practical. There's nothing wrong with wanting stuff. There's nothing wrong with having stuff. But when that stuff becomes our idol, that's when it goes bad for us. One other thing I do want to try to bring out before we dismiss. Let's look at the human race down through the annals of time and see the problems that have been dealt with and faced, even all the way up to the time of ourselves. This is going to be a dumb question, but when you start thinking about your Christian life and the ups and downs in it, how many times in the downtime has a certain literally came up and talked you into doing something you knew you shouldn't do? Anybody ever had a snake come up and say, hey, you really do need to try this, take a hit of this, or drink this, or watch this, or do Nobody's ever had a literal serpent come up the way Eve did. Okay? But yet Satan put himself in that form to come and literally talk to her and get her to see that tree in a different light. And that's, if you look at Romans chapter 5, verse 12, it says, wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. That's us. We don't have a literal serpent coming up and tempting us and trying to trip us up and cause us to sin against God. All Satan has to do is use the practicality of the things that we surround ourselves with here in this world and get us to see it in a different light, that we wind up chasing after it and desiring to have it. That's what happened with Eve here in Genesis 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes. I'm sure it was it's just like watching a commercial on TV or seeing a picture of a McDonald's hamburger on your phone. If they put the hamburger that you actually get thrown at you in the wrapper, would you want that if you saw that on your phone or TV? No. They make it look so good that it gets you to come there, and then when you get it and you see it, you're like, well, I'm going to eat it anyway. It ain't going to look like nothing when I get done chewing it up, and we eat it. I know it's a silly, but that's the way it is. So, like I said, when it comes to that, all Satan has to do is get us to look at anything practical. And if we see it in a different light that he's wanting us to see it in, chances are we'll fall for it. And that's what happened to Miss Eve in Genesis 3. verse 6. All right, we'll pick up and continue on next week. You are